5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thanks for your service. Thanks for coming. I'm over here. Look, I will tell you, I still haven't gotten over the withdrawal from Iraq and the 4,500 plus lives lost there for what seems to be nothing, and what to say to those families. Of course, Afghanistan's right up there, and you know, I was around watching as a young man or a young boy the Huey leaving the top of the embassy in Hanoi. And I remember the rhetoric this time where it was not going to be like that. It was not going to be like leaving Vietnam. We weren't going to see that scene. And we didn't see that scene, right? It was a Chinook flying with the mountains in the background, or a C-17 with Afghans hanging off the bottom of it and falling to their death. It is unimaginable to people like me. And I imagine to folks like you who wore the uniform. And, you know, look, we all know the mantra. Ours is not to question why. Ours is just to do and die, and we get that, right? We all get that. We signed up for that. But at the same time, the American people demand accountability for their for the blood that's lost, for their family members that are never coming back, for the equipping of the largest terrorist organization on the planet at the heel of the American taxpayer. And so we got to do our job here. We understand that you're carrying out orders and they're imperfect and you don't know what the answer is, and policymakers sometimes don't know what the answer is. We get that, right? Nobody's perfect. We all fall short of the grace of God. But when we make mistakes, we've got to learn from them so we don't continue the same failed policy. It is our job to get accountability, not just to assign blame, but so that we don't make the same dumb mistakes again, because lives are precious. And nobody's going to join the service, nobody's going to join uniform service if they know that no one here gives a damn whether they live or die, right? We all love our country. We all want to do the right things. Sergeant Major, I'm just so, and I was at the time, and I still remain concerned about using HKIA as opposed to Bagram, Bagram. Was there a pre-existing backup plan, do you know? Or was it always that plan? And I know that you had to collapse but still stay operable, but you couldn't collapse to the extent that you had to and stay operable. Plus, you're also required to secure the embassy, which is not on the same location, knowing that you didn't have the forces available to secure both or probably either one. Was there a plan?
Sir, there was a pre-existing NEO plan. That NEO plan, I'm not sure when it was penned exactly. I want to say it was around 2012. But in that plan, the plan was to conduct a NEO out of Bagram.
And when was it to be? Was it just a backup that there was going to be a choice of either location, or was it we're going to use this one, and if this one fails, we're going to go to that one? Do you know what was the determining factor of which one to use? Because everything was set up for Bagram, but nothing was set up for HKIA.
Sir, the plan for Bagram, being it was written in 2012, we couldn't predict what was going to happen in the future.
Right. The enemy always gets a vote, right? No plan survives first contact.
Correct. So what the exact triggers were in that plan, it never, from my recollection of that plan, it was about an 800-page document. I do not recall what the triggers specifically were to launch a NEO.
Well, it just seems. Look, none of us here want a Monday morning quarterback, especially if you weren't there, even those of us who have worn the uniform. But in retrospect, well, as it was happening, all of us, I think, that have worn the uniform were scratching our heads, saying that was the hard point, that was the place where we were most prepared to make a stand and to evacuate from. That's where we were operating out of. That's where everything was located. That's where we're familiar. Why in the hell did we not do that? And look, there was a lot of lives lost. We don't want to focus solely on the ones that were lost in the final days when it seems like it's for nothing absolutely, because every single one of them is precious. In my remaining time, Mr. Crumrick, I think you mentioned the concept of selective intelligence and the issues that it posed on the mission. What, if you know now, after the fact, what was not mentioned? What was, if you know, exactly ignored through the selective intelligence blindness? And what can we learn from that?
The plan that was ordered to the military to execute goes back to the first objective of the withdrawal and the post-withdrawal, which was having that diplomatic base set in Kabul. And that looked like the embassy and then about the 4 miles over to HKIA. The problem with that is it ignored all of the Taliban threat, which we've described here today, of which had only been getting steadily more refined and more dangerous over 20 years. And so when you pick that plan, but you choose to not acknowledge or protect against this red storm that's coming, it just leaves you flabbergasted of how did you think this was going to go?
And my time's expired, and there are good people that have been waiting to ask a question. I just got to follow up with one quick one based on that, because that's what everyone else sees. Why? Why did we just ignore? And why and who? Who made the decision to ignore, if you can pinpoint it? And look, we can't ascribe motives, but what do you pretend, or what do you suppose is the motive to ignore it?
I was not in the room. I know what was recommended as the course of action, and I know what was given back to us to execute. And what was given back to us to execute was not what we recommended. So someone above the 4-star level is the one who made the decision to do it. Ultimately, it resides with the president. So somewhere in there would be the person that you're trying to identify.
Roger, God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.